I stand in the cold embrace of moonlight, my eyes fixed on the white wooden house that once promised warmth and safety, a beacon of childhood memories now tainted by betrayal. I clutch a small USB drive in my hand like a talisman, its polished surface reflecting the shattered remnants of my past. Tonight, beneath the silent witness of a starry sky, I, Abigail Miller, am determined to expose the secrets my family has so desperately tried to hide. Apple Creek may seem like a simple, wholesome town at first glance. The well-tended lawns and pristine white picket fences speak of a comforting normalcy. Yet beneath that tranquil exterior lies a labyrinth of dark secrets and whispered lies, lies that have corroded the very core of my identity. I often remind myself, even as I tremble in the chill of the night, Apple Creek isn't a sinful town. But behind every friendly smile, every rock-solid facade, there lurks a hidden darkness. And my family, the Miller family, is the darkest secret of them all. I still remember that fateful day, as if it were etched in my skin. It was one of those seemingly ordinary summer afternoons when the sunlight danced lazily across our modest kitchen table. I had been rummaging through the drawers, searching for a pen to scribble my thoughts in a battered notebook, when I overheard hushed voices coming from behind the living room door. Curiosity prodded me forward, and peeking around the corner, I saw it, my own brother Liam, nervously stuffing crumpled bills into his pocket. In that moment, everything I had believed about him, about us, splintered like glass. I felt an unbearable sting of betrayal. Liam, who I had trusted implicitly, had chosen greed over the bond of blood. The significance of that single act, the theft of money, meant for our family's well-being, dawned on me, and with it, a visceral realization that deceit was woven into the very fabric of our lives. The money wasn't simply paper, it was a symbol of hope and promise, something that he had shamelessly stolen, not just from our shared resources, but from my trust, from our future. I remember feeling both numb and enraged, a tempest of sorrow and anger swirling inside me. In the days that followed, an oppressive heaviness settled over our home. I found myself wandering the halls like a ghost, increasingly isolated by a silence that was loud with things unsaid. The betrayal reverberated through every conversation, every glance that darted away nervously when Liam entered the room. I tried to understand why, but there was no answer that could mend the fissures tearing my family apart. The more I questioned, the more I was met with defensiveness and veiled contempt, a cacophony of denial that drowned out any hope for reconciliation. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the night that clinched my resolve. The air was charged with a tension I could almost taste. A few weeks after the discovery, as dusk bled into a dark, stifling night, the inevitable confrontation led to my undoing. I had been quietly and painfully reconciling the pieces of my broken trust when Liam, consumed by guilt or perhaps the thrill of misdirection, turned the tables. He accused me, yes, me, of stealing. His words were venomous, each accusatory syllable aimed to ruin what little credibility I had left in the eyes of our parents. In the living room, where the light of a single lamp cast long, distorted shadows on the walls, my father Patrick erupted. His eyes flared with a fury I had never seen before. In an instant, the room transformed into a battleground of shouts and broken trust. I remember the sickening sound of his fist swinging through the air, a moment that seared itself into my memory as a violent punctuation to the cold, calculated betrayal that had been unfolding for years. My mother Mary was reduced to trembling pleas and tear-soaked whispers, begging him to stop, her voice cracking as she tried in vain to bridge the divide between love and rage. That night, standing at the crossroads of torment and resilience, I experienced a transformation. With every anguished cry and every despairing plea that echoed around our dimly lit living room, I felt a piece of my old self shatter. In the darkness engulfed by both fear and an emergent, burning determination, I silently vowed that I would no longer be the victim of our family's heinous secrets. I would gather every shred of evidence, every whispered lie, and every painful truth. I would cast the veil aside and expose the Miller family for what it truly was, a labyrinth of deception and cruelty, hidden behind the veneer of normalcy. That promise was not made in a moment of blind, reckless impulse. It was born out of a meticulous, searing pain that had accumulated over years of being silenced, misunderstood, and betrayed. As I huddled in the solitude of my room, the din of the earlier conflict still echoing in my ears, I made a choice. I would not let Liam's betrayal, nor my father's explosive anger, or even my mother's despair be in vain. I would reclaim my narrative. Even if the path ahead was treacherous and paved with the remnants of shattered dreams, I was ready to risk everything, including my own soul, if it meant that the truth would finally be known. In the silent aftermath of that violent night, I began to piece together my plan. Every stray conversation, every furtive glance exchanged between my family members, and every hint of their hidden pasts became a vital clue. I spent endless nights poring over old letters, dusty photographs, and cryptic documents that hinted at long-held secrets. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that our family's sins stretched far beyond a single act of theft or a moment of anger. There were layers upon layers of deception carefully guarded by lies and maintained by silence. I agonized over the idea of embracing revenge. Deep inside, I knew that the path I was about to tread might transform me into something unrecognizable, someone consumed by bitterness and vengeance. I sat down by the window one dreary evening, the cold drizzle mingling with the tears streaming down my face, and I asked myself, am I ready to become what I despise? Can I live with the ghost of revenge haunting me? The answer came not as a whisper, but as a deafening roar from within. I could no longer trust the illusion of forgiveness that my community so reverently preached. The old priest at the local church had preached forgiveness, urging me to let go of my hatred like one might brush away dust. But what he didn't understand was that some wounds run too deep. Some betrayals cannot be cleansed by time alone. The sweetness of his words was lost on me, replaced by the acrid taste of betrayal, a bitter, relentless reminder that my family had crushed me many times over. So as I stand here tonight, the USB drive burning cold in my palm, I feel the weight of every secret, every lie, and every moment of pain that has defined my existence. This drive holds the silent confessions of betrayal and the damning evidence of a family's systematic decay. It is the key to unlocking the truth that has been held hostage by generations of deceit. I know the road ahead is fraught with danger. I can feel the eyes of my brother and the lingering threats from private investigators hired to silence me. Yet the thought of remaining silent, of allowing my family's sins to remain buried under layers of lies, is a burden I can no longer bear. Tonight is not just another night in Apple Creek. Tonight marks the end of living in fear and the beginning of reclaiming my truth. I have spent countless hours in the dim glow of my desk lamp poring over legal texts and old forgotten case files, arming myself with knowledge and evidence. I realized that my transformation would not be complete until I confronted the very source of my despair. I would expose every hidden transaction, every stolen moment of trust, and every lie that had kept the Miller family's true nature shrouded in darkness. I have chosen my course not out of a desire for simple vengeance, but out of necessity. For every silent tear that my mother shed, for every moment of denial that drowned my screams for justice, I owe it to myself and to every wronged soul to bring the truth into the harsh light of day. I will show the world that beneath the friendly smiles and meticulously maintained appearances, darkness festers. I will reveal the secrets of Apple Creek, starting with the ruinous legacy of my own family. As I stand at the edge of this fateful journey, I can still hear the remnants of that violent night. The echo of my father's rage, the pleading cries of my mother, and the uncertain accusing gaze of Liam all converge to remind me of what I have lost and what I must reclaim. Leaving behind the familiarity of that shattered house will be painful, yet it is a pain I now embrace as the catalyst for my transformation. With the USB drive as my silent accomplice, I will document every deceitful act, every hidden conversation until the masked truths of the Miller family crumble into nothingness. This is the beginning, a story of relentless pursuit of digging too deep to find that sometimes the light reveals more than just what lies in the dark. Tonight, I take my first step away from the chains of my past. I leave behind the white wooden house and the echoes of loss, ready to face a future that, though uncertain and wrought with peril, promises a kind of liberation. I have made my decision. I have embraced my destiny to expose the truth, no matter the personal cost. And though the bitterness of the stolen apple pie of life lingers on my lips, I know that only through this crucible of revelation can true healing ever begin. I am Abigail Miller, and this is only the beginning of my journey. My heart may still be bruised and my soul may bear scars, but the truth is, a fire I can no longer keep hidden. I will let that fire burn until nothing remains but the raw, undeniable facts. With every step I take away from that old house, I feel the burden of silence lift ever so slightly. In this cold, resolute night, I have found my purpose, and I will not falter. The road ahead promises challenges and dangers I have yet to fathom. Yet as the moon hangs high, casting its ethereal glow over Apple Creek, I know that my decision to rise from the ruins and reveal the rot beneath will change everything. Whether I become the avenger I now embrace or lose myself in the pursuit, the truth must be known. And so with trembling hands and a hardened heart, I step forward into the unknown, ready to reclaim what was stolen and give voice to every silent cry hidden behind those familiar white picket fences. This is my confession, my promise, and my rebellion. I will expose the darkness for what it is, and in doing so, perhaps nudge the world a little closer to true justice. Tonight, my journey begins. I had spent weeks meticulously planning every detail of that night, a night that would dismantle the carefully constructed facade of my family, and with it, the toxic legacy I had borne for far too long. When I arranged the dinner, I knew it was more than just a family meal. It was a stage set for a reckoning that I had been preparing for ever since the spark of betrayal ignited within me. Standing alone in the quiet of the early evening, I took a deep, shuddering breath as I surveyed the transformed dining room. The long, polished table was draped in pristine white linen, under soft, golden candlelight, its flickering flames dancing across aged portraits and silent witness to our collective history. Every detail had been chosen with the precision of someone who knew that tonight no secret could remain hidden. One by one they arrived. My father Patrick entered with the controlled composure of a man who believed he could still mold every narrative to his favor. His eyes concealed storms of denial and rage that would soon erupt. My mother Mary came draped in a fragile calm that belied years of silent suffering. She wore her apprehension like a second skin. And then there was Liam, my brother, once the embodiment of my naive trust, who now carried a look of uncertain defiance and dread. Completing the circle was the representative from a nonprofit legal organization, an unassuming man whose steady, determined gaze told me that justice, however delayed, was inevitable. At first, polite conversation filled the space between us like a thin veneer over a deep, festering wound. The clink of silverware and the hum of small talk were the only sounds belying the tumult of emotions swirling behind our eyes. Every tick of the clock on the wall reminded me that each precious second was driving us closer to an irreversible moment. I sat there quietly, my heart pounding in anticipation, the USB drive in my pocket, a tangible flame of resolve amid a sea of well-rehearsed lies. When the meal was nearly done and the dessert plates were cleared away, I knew it was time. With a resolve forged from countless sleepless nights and the weight of betrayal, I rose from my chair and cleared my throat. A hush fell over the table. In that charged silence, I retrieved a remote connected to the projector, hidden away in a corner of the room. I knew that every soul at that table had secrets to hide, and now, one by one, those secrets were about to be laid bare. I began by playing the first recording, a seemingly mundane snippet that would soon reveal the monstrous truth. The soft-spoken words of Liam, recorded in a moment of unguarded confession, filled the room. I could see his face blanch as his whispered admissions echoed off the walls. The recorded evidence wasn't merely an accusation, it was the unraveling of every lie that had been spun to protect the family name. My hand trembled slightly as I advanced to the next file, a video clip showing clandestine meetings and whispered promises between my father and unsavory figures. The images flashed across the screen in stark black and white, each frame a testament to the web of deceit in which we had been entangled. Patrick exploded at that. His chair screeched against the floor as he pounded the table, his voice rising to a crescendo of fury and denials. "This is a lie! You have no right!" He thundered, his words ricocheting off the walls in a futile attempt to drown out the truth. Liam's eyes darted nervously from his father to me, his face contorting between fear and indignation, a silent acknowledgement of his own betrayal. For a long moment, all I could do was stare as the carefully maintained calm of our family dinner shattered like fragile glass under the force of my revelations. Then, as if the evidence demanded a deeper cut into our hidden history, I played what would become the most damning file of all. The screen was filled with a series of documents and old letters that I had painstakingly compiled over months, documents that confirmed what I had long suspected: Liam was not Patrick's biological son. The revelation rippled through the room like a shockwave. My father's carefully guarded eyes flared with something akin to despair beneath his anger. Even more startling was the silence that befell Mary. For years she had shrouded her pain in quiet resignation, but in that charged moment the truth was too heavy to keep locked away. Mary's hands began to shake uncontrollably, and her eyes filled with tears as she finally spoke in a voice that trembled like fragile glass. I've lived in fear for so long," she confessed, barely audible over the rising din of accusations. I was too scared to break the silence, scared of what might happen if I ever told anyone. Her confession hit me harder than any piece of evidence, a raw testament to the lifetime of abuse and oppression that had molded our family's dark history. Just as we were all beginning to reel from Mary's admission, the tension reached its breaking point. Liam, overwhelmed by a mix of guilt and anger at his own failure to uphold the family's honor, abruptly stood up from his chair. In a blur of movement fueled by a toxic cocktail of emotions, he lunged across the table, his fists aimed straight at me. In that split second, chaos erupted. Chairs toppled, glasses shattered, and the sound of rapid, panicked breathing filled the room. I was knocked back, my body colliding with the hard edge of the table, the USB drive slipping from my grasp as I braced against the onslaught. For a moment, time seemed to slow, each painful second drawn out as I struggled against my brother's enraged assault. His blows came wild and unchecked, a physical manifestation of the years of festering guilt and the burden of secrets he could no longer contain. In the midst of this violent ballet, desperate thoughts flitted through my mind, memories of every time I had been silenced, every ounce of strength I had mustered only to be met with despair. And yet, despite the chaos, I clung to the one truth that would not be denied: my resolve to see justice served. I managed to break free from his grip, stumbling backward as the nonprofit lawyer who had until then sat silently surged to his feet. His voice, calm, yet imbued with an undeniable authority, cut through the clamor. "Enough," he proclaimed, commanding the room as if an invisible gavel had just fallen. His words, simple yet potent, quieted the fury for an agonizing heartbeat, allowing the final piece of evidence to come to life. With trembling determination, I reached once more for the remote and pressed the button to reveal the climax of my painstaking investigation. On the screen, a meticulously curated montage played out a final, irrefutable bombshell that depicted a secret conversation between my father and a notorious associate, laying bare his long history of conning those who trusted him. The damning footage, shot covertly and edited with precision, made it undeniable Patrick had orchestrated a lifetime of deception, and every one of us had been unwilling pawns in his treacherous game. As the final image flickered away, the impact was immediate and brutal. Patrick's facade shattered completely, his face contorting between fixed rage and the dawning horror of defeat. His vehement declarations of innocence dissolved into ragged protests as he tried desperately to regain control of a situation that had long since spiraled beyond repair. Liam, his face now a mask of shame and resignation, slumped back into his chair, his defiant posture crumbling into an almost childlike helplessness. And Mary, my once quiet, fragile mother, sat in stunned silence, her eyes now open wide to a truth she could no longer deny. In that moment, the final domino fell, and the Miller family, once a symbol of suburban perfection, was reduced to irreparable fragments scattered across the dinner table. The nonprofit lawyer calmly withdrew his phone and dialed the authorities. The sound of his decisive action was the final punctuation to a night that had begun as a meticulously orchestrated plan and ended in a cathartic explosion of truth. I watched a mingling of sorrow and grim satisfaction in my eyes as the first sirens wailed in the distance, a herald of justice long overdue. As the police arrived and took control of the scene, I felt both a hollow victory and an unyielding grief settle over me. In the midst of the chaos, I realized that the act of unveiling the truth had come at an unimaginable cost. I had achieved the revenge I once believed would restore balance, but the price I had paid was etched into every scar, every tear, and every anguished memory that the Miller family now left behind. Later that night, as I stood outside watching the swirling lights of police cars blend with the dark canvas of the early hours, a voice within me whispered a truth that I could no longer ignore. That night, the Miller family shattered. The secrets were exposed, the lies laid bare. I had my revenge. But the victory came with a bitterness I can't describe. The words echoed in the quiet, a solemn reminder that even as the truth set me free, it had irreversibly scarred the souls of all involved, including my own. In the days that followed, the echoes of that turbulent night resonated through Apple Creek. Liam was arrested, his fate sealed by the overwhelming evidence of his actions and complicity. My father Patrick was condemned not only by the law, but by the unforgiving glare of public opinion, a man whose carefully constructed life of deceit now lay in tatters. My mother, broken yet resolute, chose to reclaim her autonomy by walking away from the life of fear she had silently endured for so many years. And I, battered by the relentless unveiling of truths and the residue of old betrayals, found myself facing an uncertain future. The final moments of that fateful evening have not left me unscathed. With the weight of absolution and the enduring sting of revenge mingling within me, I drove away from Apple Creek the next morning. The white wooden house, the very symbol of our family's long-held secrets, slowly receded into the misty distance, its familiar contours dissolving into the darkness of the past. As a sorrowful song played softly on the radio, its melancholy notes resonating with the bittersweet cadence of my memories, I closed my eyes and took one inexorable deep breath. In that moment, the taste of apple pie, a reminder of sweeter, simpler times, lingered on my lips, its flavor marred by the acrid bitterness of betrayal and retribution. The road ahead stretched out before me, uncertain and wild like a promise written in the language of hope and despair. I knew that I had stepped irrevocably into an unknown future, one where every mile carried the echoes of shattered family ties, yet also the possibility of rebuilding a life defined not by vengeance, but by the fragile promise of healing. This journey, with all its pain and its truths, has taught me that the pursuit of justice is never without sacrifice. I stand now scarred yet unbowed, knowing full well that my actions have rewritten the narrative of my existence. I have exposed the rot beneath the facade, shattering the illusion of perfection that once cloaked my family. Yet even as I bear the heavy burden of those choices, I cling to an ember of hope that somewhere along the winding road of my future, I can forge a life beyond the shadows of yesterday. I realize now that revenge is a double-edged sword, one that can liberate even as it leaves behind lingering pain. Though the bitterness of that apple pie still haunts me, I have come to see it as a reminder that while the truth cuts deep, it also has the power to set us free from the chains of our past. The Miller family is no more. In its place stands a resolute, scarred soul, determined to walk the arduous path toward redemption. As I navigate this uncertain road, I cannot help but wonder about the delicate balance between justice and forgiveness, Will the piece of me that longed for retribution ever find solace in forgiveness? For now, I must live with the knowledge that I chose to unearth the secrets of a lifetime, a choice that has forever altered the course of my life. But perhaps, over time, the wounds will mend, and out of this darkness, a surprising tender light of hope will emerge. I leave behind Apple Creek with a bittersweet farewell, not solely as an act of vengeance, but as a necessary step toward reclaiming my truth. The journey may be long and painful, but I carry with me the fierce conviction that I have done what I had to do to stand up for myself, to honor the silenced voices, and to set the stage for a future built on the foundations of raw, unvarnished truth. As I drive away into the uncertain dawn, I know that the past will always remain a part of who I am. But it will no longer define me. It will propel me toward a tomorrow where I can learn, rebuild, and perhaps in time forgive. And so with every mile that passes beneath my wheels, I move further from the shattered remnants of the Miller legacy and closer to the possibility of a new beginning, a beginning forged in the flames of truth and tempered by the bittersweet scent of apple pie. I am forever changed by this night, and while the scars may never fully fade, they are now the symbols of my resilience and the harbingers of the future I dare to imagine. This is my confession, my reckoning, and my farewell. I have taken my revenge, exposed the darkness, and set myself on a path toward an uncertain but finally authentic future. The bitterness may linger, but so does the hope. A hope that life, even after shattering revelations, can offer a chance for renewal and freedom. I spent countless nights rehearsing every detail in my head, each breath, each word, each pause, knowing full well that tonight would be the night when every carefully concealed secret would be forced into the harsh light of truth. I had planned the dinner for so long it had become both a promise and a curse. This was not a gathering for reconciliation or healing. It was a meticulously orchestrated confrontation. With my heart pounding in my chest and the USB drive burning cold in my pocket, I prepared to dismantle everything the Miller family had built upon layers of lies. The dining room was transformed into a stage for judgment. I had chosen a long, sturdy table and draped it with a crisp white cloth. Candles were arranged with deliberate precision, their gentle flicker casting dancing shadows that seemed to echo the secrets lurking in every corner. Every piece of the setting was a testament to the life I thought I'd known, a life that now, like the sugar coating on a rotten apple, masked a bitter core. I sat there early, waiting for my family to arrive, my mind teeming with thoughts of betrayal and the promise of retribution. I recalled every moment of infidelity, every hushed conversation, every stolen look. Tonight was the culmination of every silent cry and every hidden shame. First to arrive was my father, Patrick. He entered with an air of preserved dignity, his every gesture carefully measured, as though he believed that his presence alone could maintain the illusion of the perfect family he'd strived to portray. But I saw beneath the veneer a tumult of unresolved anger and worry that he could never quite hide. Soon after, my mother Mary stepped in. Her eyes carried a quiet sadness, weighted with years of unspoken suffering, and though she tried to offer a gentle smile, I saw the tremor of fear behind it. Then came Liam, my troubled brother, his expression a volatile mix of defiance and regret, as though each step he took was a reluctant acknowledgement of the sins that bound him to us. Lastly, the representative from the nonprofit legal organization joined us, a silent sentinel who embodied the imminent arrival of justice. His presence was unassuming, yet resolute. I knew his involvement would tip the balance irrevocably in favor of truth. For a time, the dinner unfolded like a delicate charade. Conversation floated lightly around the table, strained politeness, awkward laughter, and calculated small talk, each word a thread in the tapestry of normalcy I intended to unravel. But as the minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity, I could feel the tension tightening around us, a silent countdown to the reckoning that was about to come. When the dessert plates had been cleared away and the murmurs of pretense had settled into an expectant hush, I rose from my seat. I reached into my pocket and retrieved the remote control that would become the instrument of our undoing. "I have something to show you all," I said. my voice resolute even as my insides churned with a mixture of dread and determination. The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. I pressed the button and the screen at the far end of the room flickered to life. The first recording began to play a seemingly innocuous conversation that caught Liam off guard. His voice steady before now wavered as the incriminating evidence of his deceit filled the room. It was a confession he'd hoped to bury with time. As his words echoed, I saw his face blanch, the color draining as rapidly as the hope he once possessed. His whispered admissions were not only a confession of theft and betrayal, they were the first crack in the facade of our carefully constructed lives. Before anyone could speak, I moved on to the next file. This time the screen showed footage of my father in clandestine meetings, his interactions with unsavory characters captured in grim black and white. Each frame was a slice of reality, grim, unyielding, and damning. My father's pleads and denials punctuated the images, but did nothing to dispel the evidence that lay before us. I could almost feel the disgust radiating from the screen, as if the very air around us had turned thick with the stench of deception. A violent murmur of indignation arose from Patrick. His eyes flashed with fury, and his hand slammed the table in a desperate attempt to drown out the undeniable truth. "This is a lie." He bellowed, his voice rising in a futile chorus of anger and denial. Liam's gaze shifted frantically between his father and me, his expression a cocktail of fear, shame, and something deeper, a regret for the man he had become under the weight of our family's sins. I took a slow, measured breath and advanced to the final piece of evidence, a file that would shatter the last semblance of normalcy in this warped tableau. With trembling fingers, I played the montage. It was a carefully edited compilation of old letters, bank statements, and whispered conversations recorded at times when our defenses were down. The screen revealed the unvarnished truth: Liam was not my father's biological son. The revelation crashed over the dinner table like a tidal wave, obliterating any illusions that had remained. The truth was merciless, exposing the tangled web of secrets our family had so desperately tried to hide. In that charged moment, my mother's facade crumbled. Mary's hands began to shake, and her eyes welled up with tears that spoke of decades of hidden anguish. In a voice barely above a whisper, she confessed, "I've lived in constant fear, always hiding the truth, always drowning in silence." Her words, fragile yet potent, shattered some unspoken covenant of silence that had bound us all. The confession was both an exoneration of the guilt she'd carried and an indictment of the life she'd been forced to endure. I could see the struggle in her eyes, a silent plea for liberation from the chains of regret and sorrow. Before anyone had a chance to collect their scattered emotions, the tension reached an irrevocable tipping point. Liam, his face a canvas of tortured remorse and frantic anger, abruptly pushed back from his chair. In a flash of raw, uncontrolled emotion, he lunged across the table toward me. The sudden movement was like the snap of a fragile string, and chaos erupted in an instant. His fists flew in a blur of motion as he attacked his blows, a desperate manifestation of the guilt and turmoil that had festered within him for years. The room became a maelstrom of shattering tempers and flying objects. The clatter of overturned chairs and jostling cutlery punctuated menacing shouts and frantic cries. My head spun as I struggled to parry the wild assault, every second stretching into an eternity of pain and disbelief. The chaos was both literal and symbolic, the physical violence mirroring the emotional wreckage we had all been complicit in building through years of deceit and denial. Amid the frenzied outburst, the nonprofit lawyer, who had until then sat quietly like a sentinel of impending justice, sprang to his feet and commanded the room with a single authoritative word: enough. His voice, firm and unwavering, sliced through the cacophony and demanded that order be restored. In that suspended moment, as if the universe itself had paused its relentless march, the chaos softened just enough for reason to reassert itself. I managed to wrench myself free from Liam's grasp, my body aching from the physical barrage, and my soul reeling from the emotional toll. Despite the adrenaline surging through me in a desperate bid for survival, I knew that I had one final, irrevocable act to commit. I reached once more for the remote, my fingers cold and resolute, and pressed the button that would unveil the ultimate truth. The screen surged to life one last time, revealing a montage I had painstakingly compiled over the months, this time an assembly of indisputable evidence that left no room for doubt. The final piece was a secret conversation between my father and a notorious figure from his shadowy past, a voice that had once whispered assurances of loyalty and respect, now betraying every promise ever made. The audio was crisp, every word drenched in the connotations of betrayal and greed. As the montage played out, the room fell into a silence so profound it seemed to swallow every shred of resistance. I watched hard in my throat as Patrick's face contorted from rage into despair. The veneer of control he had clung to for so long was gone, replaced by the raw horror of a man cornered by his own misdeeds. Liam's defiant posture wilted, disintegrating into a posture of abject submission, and Mary, my once fragile mother, sat defenseless against the avalanche of truth, her eyes wide and haunted, as if mourning not just her past, but the irrevocable future that lay ahead. With the montage finished, the imperceptible clicks of a phone came from the lawyer as he dialed emergency services. The distant wail of approaching sirens threaded through the silence, a relentless summons to accountability that resonated in every fiber of my being. There in that moment, justice began to claim its due, even as the remnants of our family's shattered legacy scattered across the floor. In the aftermath, the dining room was a tableau of ruin. Patrick's frantic protests had dissolved into incoherent mutterings, while Liam slumped in his chair, a hollow figure burdened by his own guilt. Mary sat quietly, tears streaming down her face, each one a testament to the years of silent suffering and regret. I stood there shaken and exhausted, feeling both the sting of bitter victory and the weight of irrevocable loss. Later that night, I found myself standing outside the now quiet house, watching as the flashing red and blue lights of the police cars painted the darkness in surreal, shifting hues. The cool night air did little to numb the tumult of emotions within me. Every heartbeat pulsed with the gravity of what had transpired. I felt a strange mingling of release and mourning relief that the truth had finally been spoken, and sorrow for the irreversible damage that had been done. Driving away from Apple Creek in the pre-dawn hush, I couldn't help but glance back at the silhouette of the white wooden house fading into a misty memory. The taste of apple pie, a relic of sweeter times, lingered on my tongue, its sweetness now irreparably marred by the acrid tang of betrayal and revenge. I knew that I had forever altered the course of our lives. I had achieved the long-coveted retribution I once believed would heal my wounds. Instead, it had opened a new chapter of ache and uncertainty, one where every step away from the past was a step into unknown, uncharted territory. The path ahead was fraught with its own perils. The conviction of my actions, as much as it had freed me, bore an inescapable reminder of the scars left behind. I was no longer the naive child who once believed in the sanctity of family. I was a woman forged in betrayal and tempered by truth, destined to navigate a world where justice and sorrow danced a perilous waltz. I now carried the weight of every secret, every tear, and every act of defiance as I drove into the soft glow of a new dawn. This night had been the splitting of our family, the unveiling of every dark secret that had been carefully hidden behind white picket fences and rehearsed smiles. The Miller legacy was in ruins, its remnants scattered like broken porcelain. And as I moved further away from the shattered fragments of the life I once knew, I realized that my journey was only just beginning, a path that would require me not just to survive, but to rebuild a life defined by raw truth and the faint hope of eventual redemption. In the lingering silence of that fateful confrontation, I could almost hear my own voice whispering that the act of revenge is a double-edged sword. It may cut away the venom of deceit, but it leaves a wound that time may never heal. The bitterness of that apple pie, once a symbol of stolen innocence, now served as a constant reminder that the price of unmasking the truth is often paid in shards of one's heart. As I look back on that night, the dinner, the revelations, the chaos, I know that I have changed in ways I can neither fully understand nor entirely undo. But one undeniable truth remains. I chose to stand up and speak the language of truth, even if it meant tearing down the very home I was born in. And that act, as agonizing as it was, has paved the way for a future that holds the promise of genuine liberation, however uncertain and painful the journey may be. Tonight, in the quiet solitude of my car as I carried me further into the unknown, I could still feel the echoes of our confrontation reverberating through me. I had achieved what I once thought was the pinnacle of justice, a scathing indictment of a corrupt legacy. Yet the victory was as hollow as it was complete. With every mile that I left behind, a part of me mourned the life that had been lost, even as I grappled with the fierce satisfaction of speaking truth to power. I have no illusions about what the future holds. My soul is scarred, and the bitter taste of vengeance will linger for years to come. Yet within that lingering sorrow there is a spark, a promise that one day perhaps peace may find a way to seep into the crevices of my broken heart. For now, I drive onward, carrying with me not only the weight of my past, but also the hard-earned wisdom that sometimes the only way out of darkness is to let the light burn through it, no matter how painful the journey may be. This is my testament, my reckoning, and my farewell to the life that once shielded secrets behind its fragile walls. I have confronted the demons that dwelled within my family's legacy, and though the night's revelations have left scars that may never fully fade, they have also freed me to seek a future built on the unyielding foundation of truth. And so as the soft glow of dawn begins to break the long-held night, I accept both the price of justice and the hope that somewhere down this uncertain road, I may finally learn to forgive, not for them, but for the fragile soul that now dares to dream of a new beginning. In the end, I am Abigail Miller, a survivor molded by betrayal and reborn by truth. The shattered remnants of the Miller family will forever echo the price of silence, but I choose to move forward tempered by the flames of an unrelenting desire for justice and the bittersweet understanding that sometimes only in the act of breaking can we begin to mend.